So I'm going to pass it on to one of my other bosses, member of the board of directors. She is the president and CEO of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. Please welcome Esther Aguilera.
Thank you, Sid, and thank everyone for being here. We have another very dynamic panel, very distinguished panel, and I want to welcome you to the C-Suite Roundtable 2. As a board member of HACR, I'm thankful to all the sponsors that have been with us all week and for the symposium in each of the sessions here. And I also want to thank all of the participants. What we're doing here is creating a community. We're building community, and we are on a trajectory for growth. So we really appreciate your participation and attendance. So today we have Maria Duarte with us as our moderator for this wonderful session. Maria is a reporter and community affairs coordinator at Telemundo Atlanta. Please join me in welcoming Maria Duarte.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sound check. All right, very nice. Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. How's everyone doing? Everyone's doing great, wonderful, and the night just got so much better because we have a wonderful panel here for you. It's a great treat to be in the presence of some wonderful leaders all across the country and in different fields. And thank you to the conference for inviting me and allowing me this opportunity to moderate this panel. And the way we're going to work tonight is we will have roughly about 45 minutes of asking questions, and then we will open it up to the floor for the last 15 minutes for you all to ask questions. And because we are all involved in some business and we like efficiency, we're going to jump right in tonight. We're going to start with JoAnn Chavez. JoAnn Chavez is Vice President and Chief Tax Officer at DTE Energy, a Detroit-based diversified energy company. Previously, Chavez served as tax partner in KPMG LLP's Detroit business unit serving large multinational clients. Chavez earned a Bachelor of Business Administration degree and a JD degree from the University of Notre Dame. Chavez currently serves on the DTE Energy Foundation Board, the Infirm Center for Leadership Board, the Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Board, and was appointed by Governor Rick Snyder to the Michigan Hispanic Latino Commission. She also serves as the executive sponsor of the Women of DTE and Finance Committee member of Detroit Cristo Rey High School. She is a past member of the Detroit Urban League Board, University of Notre Dame Law School Advisory Board, and University of Michigan Dearborn College of Business Board of Advisors. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Chavez. And we also are delighted to have Mr. Joe Uva here with us today. Joe was named Executive Chairman of Hispanic Enterprises and Content at NBCUniversal in April of 2013. He is responsible for expanding the company's Hispanic franchise and all of its Hispanic content efforts, including Telemundo and NBCUniversal. In addition, he is tasked with increasing the presence of Hispanic news and entertainment programming across all of NBCUniversal's network and platforms. His prior roles include President and CEO of Univision Communications, President and CEO of Optimum Media Direction, and a 17-year tenure at Turner Broadcasting System, where he rose to President of Turner Entertainment Group Sales and Marketing. Welcome back to Atlanta.
Thank you.
Uva is currently a member of the board of directors of Dunkin' Brands Group and previously served on the board of Univision Communications, Inc. and TiVo, Inc. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Joe Uva. And we also have a local Atlantan here today, Mr. Ed Martinez, president of the UPS Foundation. As president, Ed Martinez is responsible for the operations and management of UPS Global Philanthropic Employee Engagement and Corporate Relations programs. Martinez joined UPS in 1976 and progressed through various management ranks within the company. In 2007, Martinez became the Director of Philanthropy and Corporate Relations for the UPS Foundation. In addition to his corporate responsibilities, Martinez represents UPS on the World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council on Humanitarian Response and serves as UPS Executive Liaison to the Council of Independent Colleges. He is also a member of the Corporate Advisory Board for the National Council of La Raza, Corporate Liaison to Points of Light Institute's Service Council, and the Chair of the Corporate Development Council for the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, and is a member of the Board of Directors on the International Association for Volunteer Effort. He is also a co-chair of the National Academy of Sciences Resilient America program. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Martinez.
Thank you.
And these were the short bios, guys. We have so much to share here tonight of all of your success stories, and success doesn't come easy, and we've all had moments in our careers and our lives that have really been sort of career-defining moments. So with that, let's get started with Ms. Chavez, and can you share a little bit about what that single or various career-defining moments have been and where you are now?
I think my career-defining moments started before I started my career, and I think it really happened from my family. My parents are both high school dropouts, and I'm also the product of Head Start. And I remember at an early age, my father said, you have one of two choices. You can earn a living with your brain or with your back. And I really took that to heart. And so really, I don't believe I ever had an option. Failure was never in the vocabulary. I was always going to college. I was always going to be great at whatever I did. And so it was really those early formative years which I think developed my drive. It is what I believe makes me very successful today. I think there's one other defining moment, though, early, prior to my career trajectory, and that is where I attended college. So I ended up choosing a school that was filled, and no offense, with white, wealthy men. I went to the University of Notre Dame, and back in the 80s, that's what it looked like. But it really gave me the skill set to be successful in corporate America, which, as we know, is generally filled with a lot of white men. And so those early days really have helped me be very successful today.
Thank you. What about you, Joe? What do you think is your career-defining moment?
Well, I think like JoAnn, I had probably the biggest impact that defined my career was prior to ever really entering the workforce as an adult. And my parents likewise said you can either make it with your back or with your brain. And after trying it with my back, putting myself through college, working on the back of a garbage truck during the summer, I decided that literally I didn't want to do it on my back. But I think also, I think there isn't any one or two defining moments. I think it's a collection, a series of moments that have occurred over the course of my career that really helped shape and define it. And I think that ranged from being given opportunities as a reward for good performance to seizing opportunities because they were there for the taking. And I was very fortunate to work with a lot of terrific leaders throughout my career. And I think what I've tried to do is take a piece from every one of them to help develop my own leadership style.
We have a theme here, guys. Backs. JoAnn walked in today and she said, my back hurts. My back hurts as well. And I know that, Ed, you actually started your career lifting cases, and I'm sure it hurt your back as well. So can you tell us?
Yes.
You started lifting packages at UPS, and then you rose in the ranks. So tell us a little bit about where you got to where you are today.
Thank you. And first of all, I just want to thank Sid for his first conference. It's been phenomenal. And thank you for the opportunity for me and UPS to be a part of your conference. Everyone has extremely inspirational stories. You know, I think a defining moment for me, and if you've done the math, this is my 39th year with UPS. And thank you. And that's really not uncommon. I have many UPS colleagues here with me today that have very long careers. But I married my childhood sweetheart, and she's Cuban as well, and we grew up in Miami together. And I always told her, look, you know, I did start when I was 16 years old. There's going to be a moment that we're going to have to relocate out of Miami. And she said, okay. Well, we both went to law school, got out of law school, and we were ready to get into our first maybe legal positions, and all of a sudden, I got the call to be relocated to Connecticut. And quite frankly, as in many cultures, in the Cuban cultures, you just don't move away from Miami. And talk about a small world. Our very distinguished speaker earlier today, Arnie Perez, the general counsel from Carnival, grew up. Him and his wife Carmen grew up with us, and he was fortunate to have gotten a fantastic position and stayed in Miami. But when it came time for me to explain to my in-laws and even to my family that we were leaving, it was a huge upset. Really, there's no question. We had a daughter at the time already that, of course, the grandparents were flocking over, and it was quite a strain on our relationship. But we knew that in order to move forward, particularly in the corporate world, relocations and gaining experiences throughout that operation and gaining more responsibility was just par for the course. But I owe it to my wife, and Arnie made this very, very good point earlier today too, that behind every semi-successful man, there's always an even greater woman, and my wife really kept the family together. She had to take another bar exam in Connecticut when we moved there, and yet to take another bar exam when we relocated here. So she's truly a true champion. But I think that had I not taken that job, I don't think that I would have had the opportunities to really enjoy the career that I've had at UPS. And so I think that was a defining moment, taking that first relocation. I'm sure all of us, or many of us in this room, have had that challenge to have to move away from the comfort of family and take that big step.
And that leads me to my next question about weighing risks. So obviously, moving out of Miami for a Cuban is a big challenge and a big risk in their career. And I'm sure you all have had some risks as well in your career. So Joe, can you share with us about an example of a tough decision you had to make and risk you had to weigh, and what strategies you used to get through that decision?
Sure. Earlier in my career, I was with Omnicom and was asked to lead taking what was Optimum Media Direction, OMD, and turn it into a global media planning and buying advertising agency. And in order to do that, it required us to take the media and media research departments out of 3 of the most successful advertising agencies on the planet, which were BBDO worldwide, DDB, and TBWA Chiat Day. Each of those agencies had their own distinct culture. They were led by very strong executives whose persona was taken on by those agencies, and they had different ways of working. TBWA and Chiat Day known for being very disruptive and innovative. DDB known for just great creative ideas and execution, and BBDO for account management and creativity as well. That permeated the organization right through the media organizations as well, but they were very different, even in the way they lived in their office space. BBDO, even at an assistant media planner level, they had their own offices. DDB started with cubicles for their entry-level people, but very quickly escalated as you moved up into a closed office, sometimes shared, sometimes not. And TBWA Chiat Day was in a room like this, literally with no offices, very open, had a basketball court in the middle of their headquarters in Santa Monica. And it was really a challenge to be able to combine these into a new company. First part of the risk was, were we going to lose any of the people we really didn't want to lose? Second part was, how wed were these people to the culture and the way of working from where they came? And the third part was, obviously, we had competitive client conflicts across all 3 of those portfolios. What was the risk to losing the business? What I did was listen. I went and I talked to everybody, not just domestically, but around the world, and listened for 4 months before I put together a plan and a strategy. And at that point in time, brought people together and laid out for them what it could look like based on their own input and what I was hearing back from each of them, each of those companies. And so when it came time to embrace a new organization, we literally took the best of what everybody was tied to at their own company and tried to adapt it and transform it. Within 1 year, OMD was recognized by Advertising Age and Campaign Magazine as the world's most creative and best media company. So we were able to do that without a lot of fallout from any of those stakeholders.
Thank you, Joe. And what about you, JoAnn? What tough decision have you had to make, and what strategies did you use to help you get through that tough one?
So mine's an interesting one, and perhaps some of you can relate. It was really my decision to leave the partnership at KPMG. I had been given an opportunity to adopt my 2 nieces and nephew. I had made partner 4 years previously, was raising 3 small children by myself, and I was a specialist in international tax, which meant I was traveling all over the world for long periods of time. It was an incredible career that I had spent so many years building, but I had also made a personal commitment to my family. And so it was difficult. My fear was that when I left KPMG, I would never, ever reach the top of my career again. So I chatted with the brightest people that I knew. I knew that I was no longer a great partner, and I certainly wasn't a great parent if I stayed in that position traveling globally. So again, I just gathered information. I listened to every single person that was willing to share with me their vantage point, and some said, do not leave the partnership. You will never get that sort of position back. But I knew that I owed it to my family, so I quit that job. I took a very smaller job that would enable me to stay close to my family. I stayed in that position for 2 to 3 years, and then, interestingly enough, and this is where I trusted my instinct, God looked out for me, and before I knew it, I received a call from DTE Energy. I was not looking for a position. In fact, the job that I had really didn't have great synergies, and it's unclear to me why that headhunter called me on that day. And so, you know, through intuition, through listening to people, I made the right decision that now has landed me in a great career where I'm actually doing more than I probably ever would have, at least for me, for both my family, my family, my community, and my corporation. And so the best thing for me was listening, but following my own intuition, knowing that at the end of the day, my gut was going to tell me what I needed to know and do.
Thank you, JoAnn. And both JoAnn and Joe mentioned listening as an important quality to help them get through that tough decision that they had to make in their careers. Speaking of traits such as listening, Ed, can you tell us what sort of traits you believe leaders must have today?
I think listening is extremely important. And if you talk to enough people, you really know when they're listening to you. So I think listening is extremely important. I think, and what I look for, is how close do you stay to your people? How close do you stay to your operation? Do you sort of walk the floor, like we say in UPS? And there's no question that today we have many global jobs and we're stretched and everybody's doing more with less. But you really always have to stay close to your people and to your operation to truly continue to impact change. And I look for that. Certainly a variety of experiences is very important for a leader. But you really got to still continue to the basics. And the basics is we've got a lot of great technology in this world, but you still need a human being to pull the lever. And so staying close to your people is, I think, probably one of the most important traits for a leader.
And similarly along these lines, and this question is for whomever wants to respond, some of us here are very young in our careers, some of us are mostly mid-level or executive level, senior level. When you are hiring someone in your roles, If there's two people with very similar qualifications, what do you think, what traits set these individuals apart?
Well, I think there's a number of things if you look at people who have similar experiences, but I think it's important that people are intellectually curious. I think it's important that they have great critical thinking skills. I think it's important that they exhibit that they are good listeners and they are close to their organizations and their people. I think they have to be extremely flexible and adaptable today in an environment that changes. It doesn't matter what field we're in or line of business. There are a lot of external forces that come to bear, and they are changing at a much more rapid pace than ever before. Some of it facilitated because of technology, but a lot of it just because of the sheer size and scale of business today and what's at stake. And I think we all just came out of a very difficult period not all that long ago with the recession. We see parts of the world still not in recovery. So people who are, and have the courage of their convictions, and I think people who are passionate about what they want are all traits that are very important. So I tend to look at those across a scale of others to really determine who has, and fit. I think fit is very, very important in an organization, to have people who are going to get along and not disrupt the organization in a negative way. So I try to spend a lot of time getting to know people and how they're going to fit into the organization and what their impact is going to have on the teams that they'll be asked to lead.
Thank you. And Ed, I see you kind of looking off, like recalling some past experiences or perhaps some interviews that didn't go so well. So.
Well, no, I think that, we really operate in such a complex world today that when you look at candidates at every step of a career, you really now have to look at someone that has, multiple areas of experiences and expertise, and the whole concept of knowledge is power, continues, today probably more important than ever, that you have to continue to learn, no matter what stage of your career you're in. And so when I look at a candidate or when I hear of a candidate or when I see a candidate moving forward, what you see more than ever is a variety of different experiences, and not just in business, but engagement with the community and engagement with customers and engagements outside of their own business.
I think it's important too, along those lines about learning. To me, a really good leadership candidate is somebody who knows what they don't know and is willing to put it out there and then learn it.
I think that's the critical part, though, and I think we have to remember as candidates, right, the onus is on you, and you're really, if you're trying to create an artificial fit, you will fail. And so I know when I interview people, it's really incumbent upon that candidate to share and tell me why they believe they fit into our organization, and not with the words. Again, I think we often, as we interview people, I know I'm last on the interview list, right? And it's really spending time getting to know people. I've already read your resume. We already know your body of work. Now tell me about you. And I think candidates have a very difficult time telling us about them, and then trying through that conversation to demonstrate everything that Joe has mentioned, because that's really the essence. And that's a difficult talent.
And one of the things that I remember as I was looking for employment when I graduated from college was, what sort of questions do you like, or what kind of questions do you like to be asked as the employer from the candidates that will showcase the interest that they may have in the company or in the organization? Are there certain key questions that speak to you?
I like to be asked about our culture. I want them to ask about perhaps the lack of women. I want them to ask about the lack of diversity at the senior levels, right? And I will be honest, most of our large corporate companies, because that allows me to see a different perspective of theirs, right? It allows me to ask them, additional questions about why that matters to them. Then I know they're really trying to understand our culture and not just trying to get a job.
And I got a book when I graduated from college about the questions you're supposed to ask. None of those questions were on the list, so I'm going to throw that book out tonight. It did me no good. And you all, I think it was Ed who talked about community involvement, and that's something that you all are all very passionate about in different regards. As Ed is on the UPS Foundation, Joe, you were instrumental in implementing a lot of the community initiatives that are now under the umbrella of Telemundo. So can you please tell us why you decided to pursue community initiatives within media?
Well, I think it's incumbent upon any organization to really understand the communities they serve. I think it's important, particularly when you're in a sector of the business that Telemundo operates in, where you are a public face, you have a public trust, to be out there and really you have so many different ways to connect and engage that community besides just giving them hopefully great news and high quality entertainment programming, but really give them something, particularly when you're serving a growing segment of the population that has really transformed what America looks like today when I talk about the U.S. Hispanic community. And there's still so many needs that the community has that I firmly believe that we will earn their trust and engagement if we do right. We will do well by doing good. And I think that's really important. And it means that in the areas of education, in the areas of health and wellness, in the areas of financial literacy, combined with civic engagement initiatives and really putting people on a path to citizenship is mission critical. And in our case, because we are so focused on the U.S. Hispanic community, from Comcast through NBCUniversal, and certainly where the rubber hits the road with Telemundo and its television stations, and NBCUniversal, we believe that there's no time like the present to be engaging. And I think most of you in the room may know this, but every 30 seconds, a Hispanic in the United States turns 18 years old, which means they're an eligible voter. Every 30 seconds.
Thank you. And you touched on civic engagement, and that's something that is so critical, especially for Hispanic professionals to get involved a little further and get involved in the public policy making process. And I know, Ed, you sit on the board of the National Council of La Raza, and JoAnn, you're also involved in the Urban League. So tell us why it's so important for you as individuals to get involved, not only in volunteering to rake leaves or give food to a local food pantry, but going further and getting involved in actual public policy and how it affects the Hispanic community.
I think it's our sense of obligation, especially in the positions that we hold. I think as corporates, we all have various events that go on normally. The question is, are we willing to allow our personal credibility and our brand be lent to important causes? And I think if we are thoughtful and deliberate about those causes, we will do it, because it means it's really the game changer, quite frankly. If we don't do it, who will?
Ed?
And for us, it's about people. UPS, we operate in over 220 countries and territories. We have over 435,000 employees around the world. And for us, stemming back from the founder, Jim Casey, who started the company over 108 years ago, if you don't have a healthy and prosperous community, you're not going to have a prosperous and thriving business. So for us, being engaged in communities, not only here in Atlanta, not only here in the United States, but being involved in what's happening in Nepal and what's happening all over the world is extremely strategic to the growth of UPS, and I would venture to say we would all agree with that in the business community, and for us as just individuals living in our communities.
And along those lines, something that's very important to this organization, as well as you all in your different roles, is the inclusion of Hispanic-centered policies or initiatives within your companies. And JoAnn, how have you helped bring the interest of the Hispanic community within your, either now in the present at DTE or your past organizations?
I think in the present organization, I've had probably the greater ability to do that. And I've done it in several ways, really creating opportunities. So we created 6 years ago an opportunity for Hispanics to join our college internship program, but not just join our program, we taught them how to be in corporate America. So we spent a lot of time, we created a full wraparound program. And what was critical in that was not just creating the program, but making sure that it became institutionalized so that when I left DTE, that program would remain. And so we did that. The other thing was that I was encouraged by my corporate leadership when asked to chair the Michigan Hispanic Chamber. And they thought that it was an important initiative. So I brought that to my company, and now we will use the resources within DTE to advance Hispanic business in the state of Michigan. So it's interesting because for us, I'm not sure that it would have come top down. It's not as though my CEO would have tapped me on the shoulder and said, okay, you're a Latina, will you do this for us? So it's worked bottom up. It really has. All I had to do is say, this is important. This is what we need to do. And everyone said, sure, and take our resources with you. So I think it's an interesting opportunity if you are fearless enough to say that this is an important initiative.
Ed, and how did it come about for UPS? Because I know, living in Atlanta myself, I know UPS is very involved in the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, as well as service-based organizations like the Latin American Association. So how did UPS make it a priority to invest in the Hispanic community?
Well, I think it goes beyond Hispanic, right? So as a diverse company, as one of the most diverse companies in the world, we began investing in diversity decades ago. When you look at some of our partnerships, like the National Urban League has been a partner for 52 years. The NAACP has been a partner for 46 years. National Council of La Raza has been a partner for over 30 years. So, we recognized a long, long time ago that our business really depends on people, okay? We've got people moving packages, driving trucks, and the fact of the matter is that we as an organization 50 years ago really needed to understand how to maintain a diverse workforce. And so we did an outreach to these organizations, not only to help that community, but also to learn ourselves on how we can manage a diverse workforce. And when you look at the foundation's focus areas, diversity and inclusion is one of our most enduring focus areas. The foundation is over 62 years old. It's the area where we invest most. We support organizations throughout the complete spectrum of diversity, African American, Latino, LGBTA, and abilities, and on and on and on, because we want to have a representative workforce in addition to helping pull up underserved and underrepresented portions of our community.
And Joe, on the flip side, you are of Italian descent, not of Hispanic descent, and you were working for Turner, and then you decided to venture into the Hispanic market. So can you tell us what drew you into the Hispanic market?
The numbers. It was becoming very evident back in the late 90s that the population was going to continue to grow at an accelerated rate, and as we saw every succeeding census since that time, it's proven itself out. And it is the very fabric of the country is changing, and it is a new mainstream today, and it really is about a community. No other community in the United States of ethnic individuals has had the sheer scale and impact that really has helped shape this. And today we call them at our shop the 200%ers, because all of you in this room who are Latino by descent or by birth are also, you're 100% Latino, you're 100% American. And that's the way you want to think, and that's what we try to do, is to address that. And it does start in our organization. Today, Brian Roberts has a very big commitment to diversity and inclusion from Comcast. And it trickles down through NBCUniversal, and I happen to be fortunate enough to work in the part of the company that is literally not only because we serve the community, but the overwhelming majority of our employees are Latino at Hispanic Enterprise and Content. And we now serve as a pipeline to NBCUniversal and Comcast. So by giving the opportunity, training leaders, they can move through the organization, and that's the way we're helping to shape and spread diversity.
And when you joined Telemundo, one of the things that you are known for is for having shifted and taking risk and implementing new program and spearheading that. So what was the strategy? How did you decide to implement the sort of changes within a large organization that had been established for many, many years?
Well, I think part of it goes back to what we were all saying at the beginning, is listening to your employees, listening to your stakeholders, whether they be your advertisers in our case or our distributors, the people who are developing content, and most importantly to our employees, and why they like doing what they were doing, and also understanding the competitive situations and opportunities. And I think it's really important that you understand the landscape of whatever market you compete in. And for us, it was about not being Univision, quite frankly, and doing something different that they either wouldn't or couldn't do, and really serve up an alternative to the community and give it to them in a different way on different platforms with a lot of innovation. And it was embraced by the organization. It was disruptive. We had some individuals who had some challenges with the new culture and the new way of working and the direction we were headed in. But one of the things that I found particularly useful was to really establish a point in time and a rallying cry. And what we did was focus on the World Cup. Telemundo acquired the World Cup rights for the next 3 World Cups back in 2011, and this year's the first cycle. And the mantra was, become World Cup ready. And I put time clocks up in all the facilities and all the offices. That was a countdown to the 2017 Confederations Cup, which is the dress rehearsal for the World Cup. And that really was the focus. What do we have to do? What do you have to do in your specific area of the company and the business to get this company World Cup ready? And that's been the focus, and that's really been the rallying cry to what we're doing, including the community activities that we engage in.
Thank you, Joe. And you mentioned getting to know the landscape, and that's something that I think is very important. As you mentioned, it's been changing dramatically over the last 2 decades. So, JoAnn, what do you think are some of the challenges facing the Latino community in the next 10 years?
It's education. I think the reality is, I think we'll all agree that education is the key to success, unequivocally. And unless we get our undereducated population, educated in a very quick way. I mean, I was chatting with someone earlier, and they said that at this rate, we will not close the achievement gap for another 100 years. We can't afford to wait 100 years for this parity. So we have to step into this in a very significant way. I don't have the answer, but I imagine there are a number of people in this room who have that answer. And I think it's going to take every single one of us, as well as our organizations, to really close that achievement gap. But absent that educational intervention, we cannot achieve any sort of parity in this country, unfortunately.
And I love how in an article in the University of Michigan's College of Business, you said that you weren't born vice president, and given your background, education was key to get to where you are today. So thank you for sharing that. What about you, Ed? What do you think are some of the challenges facing Latinos?
No, without question, I think education is number one. I would say number two is continuing to keep the horizon out there for within the vision of Hispanics, of kids, and of kids that are underserved in this country whose parents may not have that kind of vision. I think we need to continue having sessions like this that we can take back to our communities so that the kids coming up today and their parents in these communities understand what is possible and try to do what we can to open those doors. Because I think as a business community, I think we have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go in providing opportunities. And so I think that will probably continue to be the second challenge as I see it.
I think certainly I agree with education and certainly what Ed's talking about now and making sure that the opportunities are out there and we're nurturing the community and our youth. And one of the things that I think is important to recognize too is that given the size of the population today, really underrepresented in role models beyond athletics or entertainment. And I think there's a real opportunity to find heroes in business and not-for-profits and around the country that really can serve as role models to look up to. When you just think about the face of Washington today, you know, look in the Senate and just how underrepresented we are. And I think it's very important that we pay attention to what's happening with elected officials and really always be mindful, celebrate those people in your organizations who have made an impact, who are role models to a younger generation, and really get the word out to the communities about them.
Thank you, Joe. And that took me back to what you started with by saying that when you entered the University of Notre Dame, there were a whole bunch of old white men. And that's the case for the Senate right now, but we know that that could change. And that can come about with the help of mentors. And you spoke about role models. And so did you all have mentors? And now we hear a lot about sponsors. And that's something that I'm still trying to figure out what the difference between a mentor and a sponsor is. And if you did have one, what role did they play in your life? It's up for grabs, whoever wants it.
Well, I can describe mentor versus sponsorship, although I would argue, and I get asked this often, I don't recall having a mentor. Unfortunately, there was nobody telling me how to maneuver the system. And so it was really through the School of Hard Knocks, you know, our triumphs and our failures, that I really learned how to maneuver the system and move up. And that's unfortunate. So I've shifted that in my own organization. My door is open to anyone. Any single person who knocks on it, my assistant will make time. And we make time in the current reality, which is nice. But mentorship versus sponsorship is an interesting dynamic because a mentorship is someone who advises you and coaches you. A sponsor is someone who is willing to put their credibility on the line and help move you to that next position. And there is broad debate on whether or not you should seek out a sponsor. Oftentimes people say that a sponsor will find you. I'm not so sure. So I believe that we have an opportunity as senior executives. And that opportunity is to get people ready to be sponsored and then to serve them up to our senior leaders when they're looking for those opportunities. And I think that we have that opportunity every day. And so it's going beyond coaching. When you find great young talent, you harness that talent and you help develop that talent. And then I call Joe and say, Joe, I have great talent. Will you sponsor that talent and move them up into the organization? That's what I believe most of our roles are. It isn't as though I can sponsor people up to a certain level and I acknowledge that. But I know I have the ability to sponsor that person to Joe or to Ed or to that next level. And it doesn't have to be within your own organization. And I think that's the thing that we've limited ourselves in saying, well, I can only sponsor people within DTE. Well, if DTE won't promote Joe, then I'm going to share Joe with someone else. I think it's an opportunity for all of us.
That's very courageous to do, too. And I think that is, to me, is an example of leadership. Somebody who's willing to put themselves out there and say, I'm going to do what's not only in the best interest of my organization, but I'm going to do what's in the best interest of future generations of leaders, and make that commitment and that investment. I, too, did not have a mentor or a sponsor, but I had the good fortune to work for a lot of really great bosses, leaders, and managers, and I make a distinction between that. And I think that for me, taking a piece from each one of them helped me build a career. And I think it's something we should do. And a lot of people just do it innately. You look at somebody, how did they get there? What made them successful? How are you like or unlike them? What do you need to do, steps to take? And self-motivation is really, I think, a sign of a good future leader as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, I agree. I think the concept of mentors and sponsors, I think, is phenomenal, just phenomenal. I think when I was coming up, it's typically on the younger side of whatever management group I was surrounded with. And one of the reasons why UPS has such longevity is we typically take our people and you put your arms around them and you kind of show him or her the way we want to approach our people and our business. But to your point, everybody that I worked with, I always took all the good stuff and I didn't take the bad stuff. And to some extent, I looked at everyone around me as sort of mentors, people that I can learn from. And I think over the years now, you always really have a sponsor. So someone's typically going to be your sponsor to move you along to the next position, the next opportunity. But the concept today of having mentors and sponsors, of really forcing ourselves to do that as individuals is extremely responsible. I think is extremely effective.
I think there's another piece of what we're all talking about here, and that is we haven't used the words, but I'll use them now, and that is the importance of succession planning in any organization. You can't start too early, and you really have to pay attention to it. And you need to think about what the needs of the organization, not what they are today. What are they going to be 4 or 5 years? What is your talent pool going to look like? What is your employee base? How many people are going to hit a natural retirement age or stage of their life? And where are you going to find that talent? And when you think about where the biggest employment pool and talent pool is going to be in the United States for the next 3 decades, it's going to be in the Hispanic community. And it all ties back to education, to mentoring and sponsors, to being close to the people and really investing. And I think that's really important. And for those of you who are in middle management, ascending the leadership ladder today, you need to be thinking about who's going to succeed you in your position as well. And that's absolutely critical to the health and well-being of any organization.
One of the things I also heard about mentoring versus sponsoring is that we are overly mentored and under-sponsored. Is that something that you all agree with? That people have lots of mentors, but not necessarily the sponsors to move them up the ladder? No, all right. Well, the audience answered for you. They say yes.
Yeah.
And so with that, I know we are getting close to the floor opening up for questions and answers. So before we move on...
We are the only thing standing between them and cocktails, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right, well, before we move on to cocktails, one last question. What would you say is the single most important piece of advice you ever received in your life?
Well, here's the piece of advice I give to everyone. I'm not sure if anyone told me that, but I live my life this way. Relentlessly pursue excellence. Excellence is the only thing that stands between, that will help us overcome adversity. It's excellence. It's very simple.
Thank you.
Integrity. It's all about your character, your integrity. You can never compromise that. And no matter what circumstances you find yourself, your integrity is the most important attribute, value that you have in your life.
Thank you.
Mine wasn't really advice. It was more of an observation of having worked for Ted Turner for nearly 18 years. And Ted had a very unique leadership style. When things were going well, he would be all over you to do more, to do better. And it was, don't get complacent. This is not going to last forever. You got to really go for it now. And when things were tough, whether as long as they weren't self-imposed and self-inflicted, but if they were external forces and factors, he was your biggest supporter and best friend. And he was about, you take the foot off the pedal at that point in time, you regroup, and you focus. And I think that balance really has affected a lot of people who I worked with over the years at Turner Broadcasting, who today are very successful leaders within their own right in different organizations because of what they witnessed firsthand and how they experienced it with Ted. And it's something that I try to do.
Thank you. And now we'll open it up for questions from the audience. I believe, yep, go ahead. I'm sorry, I can't see. Yes, ma'am.
Ana Luisa Ramirez Mendoza with Northrop Grumman. You talked about mentors and sponsor. There's a great book that I read. It's Forget About a Mentor, Find a Sponsor. And it has great advice on what strategies you need to follow to seek for a sponsor and not be too aggressive at times. So it was a comment I had. And then I had a question for Joe. I'm very passionate about education and educational programs, and wanted to ask you, what is Telemundo and NBCUniversal and the media doing to address the lack of educational programs, and also the showcasing of role models?
Well, that's a great question. And over the past year, Rocky Eguskiza, who's standing over there, who heads up our community affairs, has been, Rocky joined us a little over a year and a half ago to really get involved and engage in building out programs, and education was first on the list. And today we have a program that we just launched that is multi-platform. It engages people that are on their talents, it engages people who are involved in education, and we're committed to STEAM. So it's the STEM education with the arts added to it, and we are investing a tremendous amount of in-kind value through our airtime, both nationally and locally across all of our digital properties, mobile platforms, but we want to raise the awareness. And last year we sponsored a rollout of, how many people in this room have heard of or seen the movie Underwater Dreams? We worked very closely with Mary Mazzo, who's the executive producer of that, to really bring that film to life and to give it legs, not only airing it on our different platforms across NBCUniversal, but arranging for theatrical screenings, and we were actually able to take it to the White House for screening and participate in the White House Science Fair. So we are deeply invested. Comcast, through Internet Essentials, has been a tremendous sponsor of education. And NBCUniversal, The More You Know, has been a sponsor. So again, it's part of the DNA of the organization right from the very top.
Yes. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name's Sylvia Puente, and I run an organization called the Latino Policy Forum in Chicago. And most of our bandwidth is really focused on social policy issues of early education, housing, and immigration, as well as strengthening leadership in the Latino community. But I'm now doing analysis to look at how each of those issues really promotes economic mobility within the Latino community. And a lot of the initiatives that have been talked about this afternoon are how you work directly in education. I'm wondering if any of you have advice for how a policy organization like mine should engage with the business sector in Chicago in terms of looking at how do we promote economic development. And let me just share 2 pieces of data. We've done analysis in Illinois now to show that Latinos are 3/4 of the labor market growth in the state, and we're more than all of the home ownership growth in the state. We've doubled the number of college graduates, and we now have 1 out of 4 households that are earning over $75,000 a year. So we've done that analysis to show, while we deal with the challenges of the Latino community and the groups that are the direct social service providers, we also are a growing economic force. So I'm just at the beginning stages of thinking, how do I have these conversations more directly with corporate leaders to see what kind of policy proposals, initiatives, workforce development programs we can create to continue to promote economic mobility. So any suggestions or thoughts on how to move that conversation forward would be helpful.
if I can just make a suggestion, one initial stop that I would make is with your local chambers of commerce. I think that, we certainly connect with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, which is the philanthropic arm of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And, we find that, and they have obviously hundreds of thousands of chamber members throughout the country, that would serve as at least some direction, perhaps even, a platform and forum to reach out to their membership to see what programs they themselves may have, or at the very least, give you exposure to the business community in your community.
Thank you. And for the sake of time, let's make sure that we limit our comments and ask the question more directly so we can get to everyone here in the audience. We have a question in the front. We have a question back here. You'll be next. Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Andrés Tovar with the National Latino and American Indian Scholarship Directory, with more than 2,000 sources of financial aid for Latinos and American Indians, and a former retired U.S. Department of Education official. The question, I love what you folks are doing, but one of the things that I'd like to address somewhere is what happens, how can we help young people more than just those that you mentor, because you're doing it one at a time. And in the positions that you have of leadership, is there ways that you can come together and say, we've got to do a lot more to raise the expectations of our youth, because so many of our community do not fail, they quit because they don't think they can. I mean, how many Latinos do you see in advertising today? You see, now the Asians are outnumbering us, which I applaud them, but it looks like Latinos have disappeared from everywhere in the media. And I'm just interested if there's some things you can suggest that how can we do something much more comprehensive than just the mentoring one at a time?
One suggestion might be just to be visible in your communities and get out as broadly as you can. It's difficult and it's very demanding, but I'll be honest, if people call my office and they're a reputable agency or community group, I will attend and I will speak. And it takes a lot of time and energy, but it's the only way to broadly reach more people. And if we want to reach the students, I think part of what I hear the issue is that they don't see role models, that they don't see people that look like them. Mm-hmm. So it is incumbent upon each of us to get out and let them see us and to be honest with our stories. It is amazing. Every time I speak, I need these students to understand that I was poor, that my parents were dropouts, and I still achieved something, so that they need to know that I'm nothing special, right? But that they all have the same opportunities. And I think if we each did that on a very broad scale, that you might start to see some movement. It's probably not the only answer, but I think it's part of a solution.
And I think what JoAnn is saying is very important. I think it's not just about the people who are in leadership positions, but it's people who are in the organization and are aspiring to be leaders, or some who just may never be leaders, but have a very good career and they can impart knowledge. And I think on top of whatever pro-social programs and social responsibility programs that an organization is doing, there's no substitute to make sure that we're letting public educators in particular know. Between now and 2017, there'll be 3 million STEM jobs created in this country. And unless we educate the Latino youth, we're not going to have enough people to fill those jobs. And that again is an opportunity to really sell to the community and to assist in terms of, and I love what JoAnn said about, I grew up in a very blue collar, my mom was a seamstress, my father drove a truck for 35 years, and I didn't have the benefit. My father didn't graduate high school, my mom did. But I was the first in a very large extended Italian-American family to go to college. And I paid my way through. And I think that there is, if we show people there's nothing really special about us other than drive, determination, and a commitment, to our families and to ourselves. That's really what the differentiator is.
And one other thing I would add is I remember being in school and growing up in Athens, Georgia, which were very few Hispanics in that town. And we had the opportunity for people in different career fields, sort of a career day. And a Hispanic woman came in, and I had never seen a professional Hispanic woman who had graduated from college and achieved great success. So call your local school and see if they have a career day, or if you could just go to a classroom. I'm sure you all have had many inquiries as well from local schools who, just reach out to you and say, it's not a special event, but could you come to my class and just speak about what you do and share a little bit of your story. So that's also another opportunity, and as you said, to become more visible in your community. Do we have any other questions? I know we had one up here from the gentleman. Oh, sorry.
Hello, my name is Jessica Chavez Clark. I'm an engineer at Chevron, and my question to you guys is, what are you guys specifically doing in your companies, or what strategies you're executing to promote Hispanics within your own organization?
Well, I think the whole issue of diversity in your organization is there's so many fronts to that issue. You need to have, I think, number one is your leader. The CEO of a company needs to be the first one that moves the whole organization towards a more diverse workforce. So I think that's where it starts. Then you need, of course, training of your management teams, and you need to have programs that create an awareness among everybody, not just your management team. Other mechanisms that we use, of course, are the establishment of our BRGs, the Business Resource Group. You need to have someone that's going to be held accountable. And for many years, UPS believed that diversity is everybody's job. Okay, but we've come to the realization that we need to have someone that wakes up every single morning and thinks about diversity. So we basically appointed a chief diversity officer. I think that's another mechanism that you need to have. You need community outreach, and I spoke earlier about what we've done over decades to understand the community and to have that brought into the organization. So you have to have all of those things going at the same time, and yet, because of the dynamics of our global society, we're still playing catch up. We're still playing catch up, but there's no silver bullet to creating a more diverse workforce. And then I think, in UPS, we have a saying: "In God we trust; everything else we measure." Okay, and we measure everything. Okay, and now we are beginning to measure how effective we are in having a more diverse workforce.
We had a question from the gentleman here in the front.
Well, I'm Brent Welks with the League of United Latin American Citizens, and it's really just a follow-up of a previous question. In terms of diversity, each of your companies are really undergoing a lot of rapid change in the climate of your businesses. And do you believe that diversity is an asset in helping you deal with that change? And I guess I'm curious, what arguments which arguments do you find are most persuasive with the C-suite executives that you talk to about how is diversity relevant to our changing business environment, and how is it helpful to us?
I think it's mission critical, particularly if you're talking about the domestic United States market. And just again, it goes back to where that population growth is coming from and just how influential the Hispanic community is today and will become even more so in the years ahead. But one of the things, in addition to having a chief diversity officer at the NBC level and a diversity council operated at the Comcast level, what we did at Hispanic Enterprises inside of NBCU was commission a study called America Reimagined. And it really was based on interviews and personal storytelling with thousands of Latinos. And when it was aggregated and all the insights came out of that study, it was used to help inform all of the various divisions of the company about how important it was that if you wanted to succeed and you wanted to grow your business, you had to pay attention to this community. And the only way you were going to pay attention to the community and understand it is if you had people of the community inside the organization who could be champions. And today, there isn't a division of NBCUniversal or of Comcast who hasn't tapped into people who sit inside the Hispanic enterprises business to say, how can we become more diverse? How can we connect better with the Hispanic community? How can we take advantage and leverage the power of the connection that we have? And that's really only happened within the last 10 months. But it's got momentum. It's raised the level of awareness. And in our business, where we're creating content to engage people, and the community that we need to engage is this one, we better have people who understand it and are of that community and to be successful.
I think we have time for one brief question and brief answer as well from the panelists. Do we have the last question?
Thank you. Alberto Ortega with Sodexo, also a YHCA and CAS graduate. Thank you for your presence today. It's not necessarily a question, but a call to action. We have a lot of talent in the room, right? From C-suite to community. You have Sylvia Puente, who spoke earlier. I saw Patricia Mota representing NACE, Sandra Holt representing HACR. The power of inclusion lies in each and every one of us. The call to action to us is that each and every one of us, when we leave, right, today, tomorrow, whatnot, and go back to our respective cities, the call to action for us is what can we do together, collaboratively. For the power of inclusion lies in each and every one of us, but the power of inclusion is magnified when we collaborate. So the call to action I place to us, what do we do after HACR ends, in between, when we go back to Chicago, San Diego, New York, Miami, Puerto Rico, wherever, because we're going to be back in a year. But what can we do in our respective cities to build up the brand of HACR, to rise up those who are outside and not even in corporate America, those who are in corporate America, offer mentorship and opportunities for advancement, and leverage the C-suite, you folks, to support us.
Thank you. And with that, we are now going to head to cocktails, right? I was trying to remember what it was. It's not dinner, it's cocktails.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan. And let's give our panelists another round of applause, please.
And thank you.
And again, thank you for this opportunity to moderate this wonderful panel. And now I will toss it to Sid, who stands between us and the cocktails.
Thank you. And thanks to our YCAs for continuing to plug in HACR. We appreciate that as we continue to take the message around the country. And give our panelists a big applause. Thank you so much.